Hi, Kumi.
Hi, Zain. Good to be with you.
Thank you for being here today with us. We're here to talk about Palestine and its resistance against an apartheid state, where, as we know, Palestinians exist against settler colonialism, military occupation, land theft, ethnic cleansing, and genocide, as we see before our eyes today. You grew up in apartheid South Africa, and you know what it means to resist such brutality from a young age. So the reason why we're chatting today is to draw out the lessons from the struggle for freedom in apartheid South Africa and what we can learn from it today as we stand in solidarity with Palestinians for a free Palestine. And where do you see the parallels between apartheid South Africa and the Israeli occupation of Palestine today? And also, where do you see the differences as well?
I've not lived under the kind of apartheid reality that the Palestinian people have lived. And I just want to just quickly, if I might just say that
Yes.
international law in the Apartheid Convention, in the Rome Statute, for example, right? Apartheid is, includes the seizure of Palestinian land and property, which happened in South Africa, in 1913, and then people were pushed out and so on. Unlawful killings, which has been going on for decades. Forcible transfers of people from the historical lands, which we had in South Africa, which has also happened multiple times now, ever since 1948. Drastic movement restrictions. We had a thing called a DOM pass, where you had to have a piece of paper, DOM meaning stupid pass, right? That you had to have that to move to certain so-called white areas. And most importantly, the denial of nationality and citizenship to Palestinians are all components of a system which amounts to apartheid under international law. There can be no debate about this any longer. And the system is maintained by violations which Amnesty International, as well as UN special rapporteurs, other human rights organizations, and so on, have clearly outlined. But basically, they have done an excellent job of ticking off all the boxes, which helps constitute the definition of an apartheid state. If I look at what was the 4 key strategies of the anti-apartheid movement, right? First, it was mass mobilization, which was to organize women's organizations, student organizations, youth organizations, cultural organizations, and so on. And that has been, of course, part of what we have seen in Palestine. And we have seen, for example, I used to be the head of the South African NGO coalition in the post-apartheid era, and I had contact in that role with PINGO, the Palestinian NGO coalition. And you can see the importance of organizing people. And the organizing of mass mobilization is not only about putting pressure against an unjust state. It's also about giving people hope. It's also giving people pathways to participate, because actually the best antidote to the sense of depression that many of us are feeling, and I can only imagine what people involved in the conflict on both sides are feeling. But certainly, if I look at the Palestinian people right now, where they are facing a genocide, right? Where you got leaders of the Israeli state using language such as "these are human animals," the kind of language that the Nazis used, right? Then, even before all of this happened, and this particular phase in the conflict, and of course, I, as a human rights activist for the better part of my life, always condemn actions of violence against civilians, right? And so in that sense, one must be consistent with what has happened on the 7th of October. However, I cannot de-historicize the reality that there's been so much of Israeli state terrorism that has killed so many more people, that has had so many more devastating impacts, and pretend that all of that didn't happen. So the first pillar of mass mobilization is critically important even in this moment, right? The second was international solidarity, right? And international solidarity was critically important at two levels. One, at the end, many would say, many analysts have said that the apartheid state gave up finally because there was enough international isolation, whether it was the sports boycott, the cultural boycott, the academic boycott, and most importantly, the economic sanctions, right? And so, and the important thing about the boycott, divestment, and sanctions movements that we encouraged internationally was that, you know, it's a peaceful means of people showing solidarity. It's not about, you know, people in the ANC calling on allies to say, you know, come and take arms and fight with us on the ground. It was offering people a way in which they could actually be part of the struggle, because people, as we're seeing right now, you know, from the United States to every country in Europe, the level of solidarity with the Palestinian people has not been anything close to I have witnessed in my lifetime, right? And the reasons are clear. And then quickly, the third strategy was called the political underground, and that was to recognize that when you have a repressive state who can just easily kill leaders, torture leaders, throw them in prison, and so on, that you had to actually organize in a way that protected the movement from repression. And of course, the fourth was actually the armed struggle. But one might be critical of those that engaged in acts where civilian life was lost, but the very legitimacy, right, of people living under occupation and living under colonialism, the right to defend yourself is a right that is established in international law. And there's a very, very good example to see that in action today. Nobody contests the fact that the Ukrainian people have a right to defend themselves against Russian occupation, right? So when we look at the inconsistency with particularly the United States and its Western allies, where they are completely saying that we fully support the right of Ukrainian people to respond to occupation, but are quite comfortable to leave the Palestinian people who have lived under decades of occupation and to side with absolute bias and with no sense of fairness with the Israeli state is something that is a major, major challenge of the moment we find ourselves in. And the fact that when you got such an uneven balance, right, you've got the Israeli state is one of the most armed states in the world. Are there differences? Yes, there are many differences, but let me just pick one, right? Terrifying though the apartheid state was, they occupied our townships, they killed lots of young people, we had funerals every weekend and so on. But let me say that what the Palestinian people in Gaza and in the West Bank are going through now, but particularly in Gaza, is on a scale of repression that the apartheid state never inflicted upon us. We never had aerial bombings, buildings being wiped out, hospitals being attacked where predominantly Black people go to. So I just want to say, even though both are apartheid realities, I want to humbly say that what we as young people went through in South Africa is on a much more limited scale compared to what young people are having to endure in Gaza today and in Palestine more generally. And my heart just goes out to those young people and the tremendous courage, creativity, and strength that they are showing in the face of one of the most brutal types of repression this planet has ever seen.